Well, welcome to Office Hours Live.
Yay!
Thank you. We're back live. You're live. I'm live. We are live. I still haven't heard anything from Dolly Parton. Dolly, what's going on? I mean, I've sent you messages. I have been a supplicant. You're on my bucket list. Dolly? All right, today, got a bunch of things to talk about. Number one, by the way, I want to make sure you know we're every week at this time, 12 noon Pacific, 3 p.m. Eastern, with the top stories and your questions and everything else. And you can watch this later on if you want, but it's obviously not live later on. And if you want to share this, please do share it right now. Share. I mean, we were talked, I was told to share. And you are instructed to share. When I was little, I was told to share. And if you want to subscribe, there is a little subscription button, I am told, somewhat over here. And I hope you had a nice July. Did you have a good July 4th weekend? So. Oh, you had a good one. Good. Well, I had a pretty good one. And thank you. Many of you saw the video, the July 4th video we did. And thank you for your positive responses. Those of you who responded positively, many of you did. So today we're going to talk about, number one, the FBI decision with regard to Hillary Clinton, and we're going to talk about, number two, the Democratic National Committee's, sort of the platform committee's, at least tentative decision with regard to the Trans-Pacific Partnership. This is important, folks. I've got some latest information on inequality that I want to share with you, and also some new studies, some new leaked documents with regard to Uber, and then your questions. Okay? Are we set to go? Feel good? A lot of stuff going on. All right. FBI. This is not a great story, by the way. Because James Comey, who's the head of the FBI, this morning said that the FBI would not be recommending to the Justice Department criminal charges against Hillary Clinton. That's good news for Hillary Clinton, obviously. But the way he did it is not such great news. That is, he said that although there is evidence of a legal violation, and he went through all of the excuses, basically, that Hillary Clinton has been providing as to why she used the private server, and he obliterated all of those excuses. I mean, he went and he said it definitely was classified material, no question about that. Number two, that some of that classified material was authorized and authored by her, that much of it was top secret, that it could have been hacked, maybe it was hacked, that there were multiple servers, private, personal servers that she used, not just one, and that there were thousands that were of her messages that were not turned over to the State Department, as she said they were. But nevertheless, he's not going to recommend criminal indictment. He didn't explain why exactly. He just simply said no reasonable prosecutor, in his judgment, would actually use the information that the FBI came up with for a criminal prosecution. And that's it. That's it. And here's the problem, folks. With Bill Clinton having visited the Attorney General, Loretta Lynch, last week, there's already a lot of suspicion generated about this issue. And I don't want to belabor it, obviously, but we can no longer afford. Can I just be very clear? You may disagree with me, happy to talk about it with you, but I don't think we can afford any more missteps by either of the Clintons in terms of this or any other issue. It's no longer just a primary campaign. Now we are in, Hillary Clinton is the presumptive Democratic candidate. The alternative is unthinkable. The alternative is Donald Trump. I mean, this kind of stuff gives him and Republicans unnecessary ammunition. Why did Bill Clinton go to visit Lynch on the tarmac? I mean, what was in his head? What was not in his head? Why is there this carelessness bordering on entitlement? Why? Which brings up the Democratic National Committee. Democratic National Committee has a platform committee. The platform committee has 15 people, 10 Hillary appointees, 5 Bernie Sanders appointees. The 5 Bernie Sanders appointees last week, a few days ago, said that the platform committee and the final Democratic platform has got to oppose the Trans-Pacific Partnership, which, as you know, we've talked about this before. We've had a video about it. It's a terrible, terrible idea. It would make it far more difficult for the United States or any signatory nation to increase health, safety, environmental, labor regulations, protections for anybody, because it gives corporations, global corporations, the right to go to a mediator, an arbitrator, a board that is outside any individual nation, and get compensation for any potential lost profits from the nation whose health, safety, environmental, or labor, or even investor protections reduce the profitability to a company. So you can see how mischievous this is, right? And so Bernie Sanders was opposed to this. I am certainly opposed to it. Many people who have looked at it carefully are opposed to it. This would be the worst form of an attack on some nation's sovereignty to protect its own workers, its own citizens, its own consumers. And Hillary Clinton, finally, last October, she came out against it. So why is it that on this Democratic Platform Committee, Hillary Clinton's 10 representatives refused to go along with an amendment provided by the Bernie Sanders 5 delegates that would oppose and put the Democratic Party on record as opposing the TPP, the Trans-Pacific Partnership? I don't understand it. This looks, what is it? What is it? What is going on here? Again, suspicions are easily raised. I mean, it would be the simplest thing in the world, right? For the Democratic Platform Committee. And the Democratic Platform Committee, by the way, this 15-person committee, what their recommendations are will be ratified or not ratified by a much larger group, about 120 people who are also picks by Hillary Clinton and by Bernie Sanders, a much larger platform committee that will be editing this 15-person platform. Make sure, if you get a chance, I have a petition I started on this web page, on this Facebook page. If you get a chance, join me and ask the Democratic Convention and the Platform Committee to make it very clear that the Democratic Party is against the TPP. Will you? And again, very much in line with all of this, new data we have on inequality. From one of my colleagues here at Berkeley, Emmanuel Says, an extraordinarily talented economist who actually did most of the pioneering work on discovering how unequal this society actually is. Just last couple of days, Emmanuel came out with revisions to his original work, bringing inequality right up to last year. This is the most recent data we have, showing that over the past year, the top 0.1%, their incomes grew 9%. And if you're in the top 1%, your income grew 7.7%. But if you're in the bottom 99%, your income grew 3.4%. And of course, if you're in the middle of the bottom 99%, your income probably grew not at all. The point is, inequality continues to widen. Now, if you look at the mainstream press, what did they do with this? They said, oh, isn't that great? If you're in the bottom 99%, your income went up 3.4%. The problem is, when inequality widens, what happens? The people at the top gain not only more wealth, but also more political power to rig the system to their benefit. That's what we are dealing with. That's the kind of vicious cycle of wealth creating political power, creating more wealth that we've been dealing with for years now. And when you see this kind of widening inequality, you know it is an invitation for more of that same political influence that undermines our democratic system and also makes more people feel like the game is rigged. Even though you have more people who are doing a little bit better, it doesn't matter if the game is rigged. The sense of unfairness, the sense of arbitrariness continues. Are you with me? All right, final story, again, along the same lines, about Uber. Some documents, again, a few days ago, were leaked to BuzzFeed, and BuzzFeed did an analysis of the documents leaked from Uber. Uber didn't want them leaked, obviously. And what did the documents show? That contrary to what Uber has been saying that Uber is the greatest thing since sliced bread. It's the vehicle for the American dream. It's the way in which people can achieve the American dream. Well, it's not an American dream, because Uber drivers, when you deduct their expenses, which is something that has to be done because they have very high expenses, and Uber's not paying their expenses. So when you deduct their expenses, if you are an Uber driver in Denver, you're making about $13.70 an hour. If you're an Uber driver in Houston, you're making it about $10.25 an hour. If you were an Uber driver in Detroit, you're making $8.77 an hour. You're not doing all that much better than, what, a Walmart worker. I mean, in fact, a Walmart worker at least has all the labor protections of unemployment insurance and workers' compensation and Social Security and even the Affordable Care Act. But if you are an Uber driver, you don't get any of this. So you are in many ways worse off than Walmart workers. The gig economy is not working for most Americans. And insecurity, it's not just wages and jobs, it's also economic insecurity. Not only do you have low wages on an hourly basis, but you don't know from week to week or month to month how much you're going to be earning. You see how all this fits together? You don't. It fits together because if you've got suspicions mounting about everything from Bill Clinton visiting the Attorney General, it feels like the game to some people as if it's kind of rigged, right? The system is rigged, and at the same time you get the Democratic National Committee, the Clinton people on the DNC Platform Committee not willing to oppose the Trans-Pacific Partnership, which is a rigging by big corporations, and at the same time you've got inequality widening, and at the same time you've got Uber drivers and other gig economy people who are losing ground. You see how more and more people feel like this system is not working for them? You get it? All right. On that upbeat note, it's not upbeat. I wish I could be more upbeat, but I can't be. All right, your question, Mark Garcia. Should we scrap the electoral system and just use the popular vote to stop swing states from overpowering everybody else? Yes, we should use the popular vote. Absolutely, Mark. I think that the way we're doing it is an anachronism, and it's amazing to me that even after the year 2000, we're still, and what we went through in 2000, we're still doing it the old way. Brett Renyard, please don't keep saying Hillary is the better choice. Brett, who's the better choice? Trump? Brett? Joe Wynn, would you have voted to prevent people on the no-fly list from buying guns? Yes. Bruce Johnson, here's a question that has been bothering me. Why did Hillary use her own private email server? I don't see it as a big security risk, but why would she go to the trouble? Bruce, I've been asking myself the same question. If she has nothing to hide, why did she do it? Now, the answer I kind of come up with sometimes is that if you've been through everything Hillary has been through over the last 25 years, you remember the 1990s. You remember the right wing going after her on Whitewater and Vince Foster and Travelgate and, everything else. There was no evidence ever come up with anything that she did wrong. But if you had gone through that, the chances are that, you're going to be fairly guarded. This is not, by the way, this is an explanation. It's not a justification. And there's a difference between an explanation and justification. Next question, please. We're slowing down with regard to questions. There's no question. Oh, here it is. Josh Bittner, I challenge you to convince me to still vote for her, HRC, Hillary Rodham Clinton, because now I'm feeling the same wrath against the system and the establishment as many of the Trump supporters. Josh, Can I just say, I have known Hillary Clinton since she was 19 years old. I have known her, I knew her at college, I knew her, we went to law school together. Bill Clinton and Clarence Thomas and Hillary Clinton and I were all at law school at the same time, took many of the same classes. I knew her when she went to Arkansas with Bill, married Bill. I knew her when she was First Lady of Arkansas. I have known her when she was First Lady of the United States. I knew her on the campaign in 1992. I've known her a very, very long time, and I admire her. I think she's basically a good person. You know, she's gotten a she's got a bum rap. And again, I want to emphasize, if you had gone through everything she has gone through over the past 25 years, in terms of all of the attacks that have been mounted against her, you know, you might be somewhat defensive. You might not want to reveal everything. You might not be as transparent as you should be. But that, again, is not a justification. I'm just saying that I understand it. And to my experience and knowledge, if you put Donald Trump, who's I don't want to be too harsh about this, he's a moron. I mean, he's a megalomaniac. He's a narcissist. He is a bigot. I'm not being too harsh, am I? I mean, he is the least qualified person I have ever in my life seen run for the president and be the head of a national party ticket. He is the least qualified person, I dare say, who has ever been the head of one of our national party's tickets. He would really be a menace to everything we believe in this country. So is there any doubt about who you should support? Martin Marks, what is the best way to implement a proportional representation plan in order to break the monopolies the two major parties have on politics in America? Well, Martin, you know, there are ways to change the laws, but you would have to, I think, probably change the Constitution in terms of how our winner-take-all system is organized. Now, that doesn't mean that a third party is impossible. We've had third parties emerge. We have had realignments. In fact, I've mentioned to many of you before, and I'll say it once again, I think after November we should think seriously about a third party. Call it a new progressive party that's going to field candidates who support the Bernie Sanders agenda, particularly getting big money out of politics, and maybe actually even field candidates, particularly from a new party, and maybe even in the year 2020 put up a new presidential candidate. But for the time being, there's very, very little we can do, or in my view, should do. I don't want to risk Donald Trump being our next president. Charles Boynton, why can't we all agree to just write Bernie in? Well, Charles, if you can get everybody to agree to write Bernie in, I'm with you. Olivia Raven, would you ever consider running on a third-party ticket? Not this year. Anarchus Cinch, is that your real name? Come on. Please address the billions upon billions of dollars the U.S. could collect in tax revenue if corporations were not allowed to keep massive amounts of money out of the country. Well, it is a huge amount. Corporations now have outside the country something in the order of $1.1 trillion. And a lot of that money is parked outside the country, not because they earned it outside the country and are just keeping there for future investments outside the country. No, it's staying outside the country because they don't want to pay taxes here in the United States. And to me, that can be fixed. We can adopt a system in which corporations have to pay taxes in full on their earnings, or else we can make it very difficult for corporations to transfer money earned in the United States to an offshore tax haven. We are not doing it. Why are we not doing it? You guess. You're right, because of their political power. That's why all of this basically comes down to getting big money out of politics. Peter Henry, did you watch 5 weeks for the Oh, fireworks for the 4th of July. Yes. Did you? Nathan Olivas, what is the most effective way of pressuring politicians to do away with Citizens United? Well, the Constitution, Nathan, allows 2 different methods of amending the Constitution. One, to my mind, has never been used, and it's very dangerous. That is calling a new constitutional convention. That can be done, but once you call a new constitutional convention, anything can happen. Anything can happen, and I, frankly, would be too worried about that. The other way is through the states and through Congress. It's difficult to do that. I think the best way of overturning and reversing Citizens United is making sure we have a Democratic president after next January, taking January 20th, who is going to appoint Supreme Court justices who are committed to reversing Citizens United. Gino Amodio. Gino, did I pronounce it correctly? No? Amadio? No? Gino? Okay, do you think state primaries should be rescheduled so larger states like California vote earlier in the process? You know, Gina, that's what I got wrong. You know, I think, and I've thought for a long time, that ought to happen. California is the last state, or one of the last states. There's District of Columbia after California, and yet California, 1 out of 8 Americans lives in California. We are disenfranchised. We're disenfranchised certainly in the general election in November because everybody assumes that California, like New York, are Democratic states, so people don't even campaign in California, the general election. So at the very least, let's have primaries that are earlier so that Californians can have more of a say. Okay, Alicia Patz, are you going to vote for Hillary in November? That's my business. Elisa Guadalupe Rizzo, if both third-party candidates were allowed on the debate stage, both third-party candidates, do you think it's possible for one of them to win? Elisa, I doubt it. Because the Democratic and Republican Party structures are so overwhelmingly entrenched. It is very, very hard for a third-party candidate, pending, kind of a massive realignment, like we may have. I mean, I think that if the Democratic Party doesn't listen to the Bernie Sanders contingent, and if the Republican Party continues to be taken over by lunatics, then there is a big opening for a third party based on the principle, fundamentally, of getting big money out of politics and a kind of people's progressivism. David Quackenbush? David, is that really your name? I don't want to denigrate your name. Quackenbush is a perfectly fine name. Am I mistaken, or have the news cycles stopped covering Bernie? Since he's still in it, why has everyone stopped covering his campaign? David, the problem is that even from the beginning, you know this as well as I do, the major media did not want to cover Bernie. And now, once he's no longer the presumptive nominee, they don't want to cover him at all. I think they should cover him. I think that he is not yet conceded. He is still potentially, now again, the probability is very, very tiny, he is still potentially the Democratic nominee. So there should be coverage. And I know that Bernie Sanders is out on the hustings. He is still giving talks, giving speeches. His candidacy is very much alive. And I think it's fundamentally unfair for the media not to cover him. Also, given that he won 22 states, and a majority of voters under 30, more of them voted for Bernie Sanders than voted for Donald Trump and Hillary Clinton together. Did you get me? More under 30 voters voted for Bernie Sanders than for Hillary Clinton and Donald Trump together. This is a large constituency. Kit Schultz, there are all kinds of statements on Facebook about Bernie being a write-in candidate in most states. What does that mean? Seems like writing in is something that can be done anyway. Yes, it can be done anyway. You can write in candidates. It's very, very difficult, though, for people to write in candidates. I mean, you have to have a very, very broad write-in movement. Yeah, Ellie, you thought that was funny? Yeah, Ella's laughing.
Right in.
Zoe is right. I don't know, people are laughing. My whole group, everybody is. I didn't say it. Did I say something funny just now? Okay, John Ellis. Is it better for progressives to try and reform the Democratic Party by flooding with new progressive candidates, or to start their own new progressive party. John, I'm very close to the point of suggesting a new progressive party. And I'm thinking it through, as I hope you are, and I think we should all begin to come to some closure on this in the next few months, certainly just after the November election, because I, like many of you, am very discouraged. I think the Democratic Party is just a big fundraising machine, and obviously the Republican Party is a big fundraising machine. I'm not suggesting there's no difference between Democrats and Republicans in Congress or elsewhere. Obviously there is. But the party structures are designed simply to raise a lot of money, mostly from big, big money sources, in which case we might need a voice that is called, perhaps, a new progressive party. Christine Monenpot, did I get that right, Christine? What are the obstacles to examining the Clinton Family Foundation financial doings? No one seems to be doing it, but surely it's as important as Donald Trump's many financial failings. Christine, I assure you that Donald Trump is spending, and the Trump campaign is spending a lot on opposition research. They're doing that research at this very moment, dredging up whatever they can possibly find. Paulo Lim, judging from the reactions of people on your page, I find it difficult to believe the Bernie or bust crowd will be insignificant. Why do you think the polls seem to be underestimating their power or numbers? Well, Paulo, look, as much as I love the followers on my page, you know, there is a tendency on Facebook and in the social media for people to make these pages a little bit less representative of the population at large than would be the case if we're sort of random. And so while my page has a lot of Bernie or busters, I'm not sure that there is that percentage, the same percentage of Bernie or busters in the Democratic Party or even among Bernie voters. A kind of random sample of Bernie voters that I have done, kind of a free floating focus group, suggests to me that about 3/4 of Bernie voters are already coming over to vote for Hillary. And that kind of free-floating focus group is it matches exactly what a lot of polls are showing. Dave McFawn, Bernie supporters don't understand that a movement takes years. Women's suffrage, civil rights, LGBT rights. So many of them talk of staying home this November, which means they don't truly want to be part of the everlasting change, just in it for the moment, like Snapchat. Well, Dave, you do have a point. It does take years, and I've said this before to many of you. I have been in movements. I'm old enough that I was in the civil rights movement at the periphery. I was not a central player, obviously. I was in the anti-Vietnam War movement. I have been involved in a lot of movements, some of which have not borne fruit, but some of which actually, civil rights and anti-Vietnam, actually did work. But it takes time. It takes huge effort. I was working on family medical leave and the Family Medical Leave Act for, 10 years before we finally got it passed, and I was privileged to be the Secretary of Labor that actually implemented it. But I just say to people all the time, you have got to be tenacious. You've got to have patience. You've got to keep working. Keep working after elections, before elections. The election itself is the culmination of a lot of work, but that's not the actual work. 2 more questions. Okay, Kevin Cho, do you listen to podcasts? Yes. And this is the last one. Last question. Becca Slick. Will you be in Philly? It's important that leaders like you help keep this progressive movement mobilized and engaged. Becca, I'm going to do everything I can and continue to do everything I can to keep you guys, assuming that you were part of the progressive movement, as I am, actively engaged. I mean, particularly this Facebook Live and our office hours and the interviews we do live and the videos we do and what I try to do on the Facebook page and also our movies, our documentaries like Inequality for All. And we're working on a new documentary right now based on my most recent book, Saving Capitalism for the Many, Not the Few. All of that effort is just intended to kind of help all of us, all of you, sort of feel that you can be mobilized and organized and energized, not just for the so-called progressive cause, but for the country, for the impact that we all have to have on the country, for the good of all. And I don't want to blow my own horn here. That's not what I'm talking about. The question was, what can I do? What am I doing? Whether I'm going to the convention or not, I frankly have not completely decided, but I'm not going to go if the convention is just going to be an infomercial, as most conventions are. And on that note, let me just say to all of you, we've been talking about patience and perseverance and tenacity with regard to the progressive cause, which is really the nation's cause, the world's cause. And I want to remind you, many of you are despairing in your notes to me or on my page. You say, oh, well, you know, I was a Bernie supporter and now I'm either reluctantly going to vote for Hillary, or I'm never going to vote for Hillary, or I'm going to stay home, or I'm not going to stay home, and I don't know what to do, and I feel completely disenfranchised, and I feel completely sort of betrayed. Stop. Get a grip. This is going to take time. And I want you to be patient. And I want you to understand that we are building a movement. You are building a movement. You are having a huge effect on this country. The fact that Bernie Sanders took 22 states, the fact that we have a Democratic candidate, a putative Democratic candidate, a presumptive Democratic candidate that has taken a lot of Bernie's positions with regard to the Trans-Pacific Partnership and $15 minimum wage almost, and many, many other issues. Many people in this country are now convinced that we need a single-payer health care plan, for example. They didn't even understand that before Bernie Sanders started. And most importantly, the vast majority of people in this country want to get big money out of politics. So we're making progress. Don't think we are not making progress. Keep fighting. Keep fighting. And on that note, I want to thank Zoe Umlaut Beck and also Yael Bridge for their continuous help and continuous help on this every week. You know, here we are, and we continue to do this, and you don't even give them credit, but I do. See you next week.